Hello, my friends. My name is Emma, and today I want to tell you a story. A story about failure, struggle, hope, and the power of one small word, yet. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to KGB English Hub, where we bring you powerful stories and lessons to help you learn English and grow in life. Are you ready? Let's begin. I still remember the day I sat in my English class feeling completely lost. The words on the board looked like a puzzle I couldn't solve. The teacher asked me to read a sentence, but my voice trembled. My classmates waited. My heart pounded. I tried. I failed. The words wouldn't come out the way I wanted. People giggled. Some whispered. I felt ashamed. I can't do this, I thought. I'll never be good at English. Have you ever felt that way? Like no matter how hard you try, you just can't do it? If you have, then listen closely, because this story is for you. That evening I went home defeated. I told my mother, I am terrible at English. I'll never learn it. She looked at me, smiled, and said, You're not terrible at English yet. That one word, yet, changed everything. She explained, You don't know it yet, but you can learn it. Every expert was once a beginner. Every great English speaker once struggled. And that night, I decided, I won't say I can't. I will say I can't yet. I started small. One new word a day, just one. Speaking one sentence to myself in the mirror. Watching English movies with subtitles. Writing in a journal, even if it was just short sentences. Some days were tough. Some days I wanted to quit. But every time I felt like giving up, I whispered to myself, Not yet, Emma. Keep going. Months passed. One day my teacher asked a question in class. I raised my hand. My classmates stared. Emma? Answering in English? I took a deep breath. I answered. It wasn't perfect, but my teacher smiled and said, Great job, Emma. That small victory felt like winning a gold medal. It was the first time I believed in myself. That's when I realized success is not about being perfect. It's about trying, failing, and never giving up. From that day forward, I became unstoppable. I practiced English every day. I made mistakes, but I didn't let them stop me. I spoke with confidence, even if my grammar wasn't perfect. I believed in the power of yet. And you know what? Today I teach English to others. If someone told the younger Emma that she would one day be speaking English confidently, she would have laughed, but here I am. And if I can do it, so can you. My friend, if you're struggling with English, don't say, I can't speak English. Say, I can't speak English yet. Every mistake is a step forward. Every failure is progress. Keep going, and one day, you will look back and see how far you've come. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to KGB English Hub for more motivational stories, lessons, and tips to help you become the best English speaker you can be. Hello, dear friends. Today I want to share my second story with you. Yes, this is the second inspiring journey I'm bringing to you, and I hope it fills you with motivation. A story of determination, resilience, and unwavering belief in oneself. This is the story of my dear friend Rocky. His journey of learning English was not easy, but his small steps led to big dreams. If you're struggling to learn English, stay with me until the end. I promise you'll feel inspired. And don't forget to subscribe to KGB English Hub to keep improving your English skills. Rocky and I grew up in a small town where English was rarely spoken. We studied in a local school where English was just another subject, not a language we truly understood. Rocky, however, always had big dreams. He wanted to travel the world, connect with people from different countries, and even work for an international company. But there was one problem. He barely spoke English. I still remember the day he told me, Emma, I want to learn English, but I don't know where to start. He was afraid of making mistakes, afraid that people would laugh at him. But deep inside, he knew that if he wanted to achieve his dreams, he had to take the first step. At first, Rocky struggled a lot. He found grammar confusing, pronunciation difficult, and vocabulary overwhelming. There were times when he wanted to give up. I remember one evening, he came to me and said, "Emma, maybe English is not for me. Maybe I should just accept that I will never be good at it." I looked at him and said, "Rocky, do you remember how you learned to ride a bicycle? You fell many times, but you never gave up. Learning English is the same. Every mistake is a step forward." That night, something changed in him. Instead of feeling defeated, he decided to change his approach. He made a simple plan, one small step at a time. Rocky started watching short English videos every day. He listened to English songs and tried to understand the lyrics. He carried a small notebook where he wrote down 5 new words daily. And most importantly, he started speaking, even if it was just a few words. At first, he was shy. He made mistakes, mixed up words, and sometimes got laughed at. But he kept going. He knew that every word he spoke, every sentence he wrote, and every video he watched was bringing him closer to his goal. One day, after months of practice, he came to me with a big smile and said, "Emma, I just had a conversation in English with a tourist." It was a short conversation, but it was a huge victory for him. Rocky's confidence grew. He started reading English books, watching English movies without subtitles, and even writing small articles in English. He joined online language exchange groups, where he spoke with people from different countries. Then came the biggest moment of his journey. He applied for an internship in an international company. The interview was in English. He was nervous, but he remembered all his small steps. He walked in with confidence and did his best. A few days later, he received an email. He got the internship. I will never forget the happiness in his eyes that day. He proved that determination and consistency can make dreams come true. My dear listeners, if you are learning English and feel like giving up, remember Rocky's story. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to start. Take small steps every day. Speak, listen, read, and write. Learn from your mistakes, and most importantly, believe in yourself. If Rocky can do it, so can you. To help you on your journey, subscribe to KGB English Hub, where you will find amazing lessons, tips, and motivation to keep learning. Let's take small steps together towards big dreams. Hello everyone, welcome back to KGB English Hub, your place to learn, grow, and get inspired. Here is third story for you, a story about a broken pencil and a lesson in never giving up. This is the story of my friend Anita, a girl who turned failure into success and proved that determination can change everything. So sit back, listen carefully, and let's begin. I met Anita in high school. She was a quiet girl, always sitting at the back of the class, sketching something in her notebook. She loved art more than anything in the world. While other kids played during recess, she sat alone, drawing beautiful pictures. One day, our teacher announced an art competition. The prize? A full scholarship to the best art school in the country. Anita's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Emma, this is my chance," she told me. "I've always dreamed of becoming an artist. I have to win this." I could see the passion in her eyes. But passion alone is never enough. Anita worked day and night. Every free moment was spent perfecting her drawing. She used the best colors, the finest details, and poured her heart into her art. Then came the big day. The classroom was filled with students, all ready with their masterpieces. Anita's hands shook as she placed her drawing on the desk. It was breathtaking, a sunset over a quiet lake with reflections so real they looked like a photograph. The judges walked around, nodding in approval. Anita's heart pounded with excitement. But then, something unexpected happened. A boy, jealous of Anita's talent, walked past her desk. With a smirk, he knocked over his ink bottle. Black ink splattered across Anita's drawing. The entire class gasped. Her masterpiece ruined. Anita stared at the black stains covering her work. I saw her eyes fill with tears. The dream she had worked so hard for was slipping away. She reached for her pencil to redraw the picture, but in her frustration she pressed too hard and snap! Her pencil broke in half. She froze. It felt like the universe was telling her to give up. I walked over and whispered, "Anita, don't give up. There's still time." She shook her head. "Emma, look at my drawing. It's ruined. And my pencil, it's broken. I fixed this." I picked up the broken pencil and placed it in her hand. "A broken pencil still writes," I said. "You don't need everything to be perfect to keep going." She stared at me for a moment, then at her ruined drawing. And then something changed. Her sadness turned into determination. She grabbed the broken pencil and started drawing right over the ink stains. She transformed the ugly black marks into something new. The splatters became birds flying across the sky. The ink lines turned into shadows, adding depth to the scene. What was once a disaster became a masterpiece. When the judges reached her desk, they were amazed. "This is incredible," one of them said. "You turned a mistake into art. This is creativity at its finest." And then the moment of truth, the results. The principal stepped forward. "The winner of this year's competition is Shanita." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. She had done it. Not because everything went perfectly, but because she refused to give up. Anita went on to become a famous artist. Her work is displayed in galleries across the world. But she never forgot that day in school when a broken pencil taught her the most important lesson. Failures are not the end. They are just the beginning. So to all of you listening today, whatever challenges you're facing, whatever dreams seem impossible, remember Anita's story. A broken pencil still writes, and so can you. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to KGB English Hub for more motivational stories and lessons to improve your English. Hello everyone, and welcome back to KGB English Hub. Today I want to share a story that will inspire you to overcome your fears and embrace your English learning journey. This is the story of my best friend, Maria, a girl who transformed from being terrified of speaking English to becoming a confident, fluent speaker. And if she can do it, so can you. So let's go back to where it all began. Maria moved to the city from a small town in South America. She was full of dreams, but held back by one big fear: speaking English. I still remember the first time she walked into our English class. She sat at the back, eyes down, avoiding conversation. Whenever the teacher asked a question, she would freeze. Her hands would tremble, her face would turn red, and she would whisper, "I can't." One day after class, I found Maria sitting alone in the library, tears in her eyes. She looked up at me and said, "Emma, I feel so stupid. Everyone speaks better than me. What if I say something wrong and they laugh?" I could see the fear in her eyes. I knew exactly how she felt because, trust me, I had been there too. But I also knew that fear was just a wall she needed to break through. So I told her something that changed everything. "Maria, do you remember when we were kids and you taught me how to ride a bike?" She nodded, recalling how I had struggled in the beginning. I said, "You told me, keep trying, Emma. You'll never learn if you don't fall first." Learning English is the same. You have to make mistakes to improve. Maria thought about it for a moment. Then she wiped her tears and said, "Okay, let's try again." From that day on, Maria made a promise to herself. She would not let fear stop her anymore. Instead of hiding in the back of the class, she started sitting in the front. Instead of staying silent, she started answering at least one question each day. And instead of avoiding conversations, she forced herself to say hello to strangers in English. She still made mistakes, lots of them. But something amazing happened. No one laughed at her. Instead, they encouraged her. They helped her. And slowly, Maria started to believe in herself. One day, we went to a coffee shop, and Maria ordered her drink in perfect English. The barista smiled and said, "Your English is really good." Maria's eyes widened. "Really?" she asked, almost in disbelief. For the first time, I saw a new light in her eyes, the light of confidence. From that moment, everything changed. She started watching English movies without subtitles, reading books, and even making English-speaking friends online. And guess what? Within a year, Maria was speaking fluently. A year later, Maria got a job interview in English. She was nervous, of course, but this time she didn't let fear win. She walked in, smiled, and spoke confidently. And you know what? She got the job. That same girl who once sat in the back of the class, too afraid to speak, was now working in an English-speaking company. Maria's story is proof that no matter how scared you feel right now, you can do this. You might struggle, you might make mistakes, but every mistake is a step toward fluency. Every fear you overcome makes you stronger. Just like Maria, you can turn your fear into confidence. And if you need support on your journey, subscribe to KGB English Hub. We're here to help you, guide you, and remind you that you are capable of amazing things. So what's stopping you? Take that first step today. Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to another inspiring episode of KGB English Hub. Today, I have a story that will not only motivate you, but also prove that consistency is the true magic behind mastering English, or any skill in life. This is the story of my dear friend Tom. If you've ever felt frustrated with learning English, if you've ever thought, maybe I'll never be fluent, then listen closely. Tom was once in your shoes, but today he speaks English with confidence. And you know what? You can too. Let me take you back to where it all began. Tom was an ambitious guy with big dreams. He wanted to travel, work for an international company, and make friends from all over the world. But there was one problem. His English was terrible. Every time he tried to speak, he froze. His vocabulary was limited, his grammar was messy, and his pronunciation, let's just say it needed some serious work. One day he came to me, frustrated. "Emma, I've been learning English for years, but I still can't speak fluently. What am I doing wrong?" he asked. I smiled and said, "Tom, you're treating English like a hobby. You practice one day and then forget about it for a week. You need consistency. You need to practice every single day." He looked at me, doubtful. "Every day? But I don't have time." And that's when I told him something that changed his life forever. You don't need more time. You just need to use the time you already have wisely. That night, Tom made a decision. He would practice English every single day, no matter how busy he was. But he didn't just set a goal. He made a plan. First, he created small, daily habits. Instead of scrolling through social media in the morning, he listened to English podcasts. While eating breakfast, he repeated phrases out loud. On his way to work, he watched short English videos. At night, he spent just 10 minutes writing in English. He didn't do anything extreme. No 5-hour study sessions, no boring grammar drills, just small, simple steps every day. And guess what? After a week, he felt no change. After a month, still no big improvement. But then something amazing happened. 3 months later, we met again, and this time Tom was different. He was speaking with more confidence. His sentences were smoother. His pronunciation had improved. He laughed and said, "Emma, I think I'm finally getting better." And I replied, "Of course you are." That's the magic of consistency. You see, learning a language is not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. Tom wasn't the smartest student. He wasn't the fastest learner, but he was consistent. And that's why he succeeded. 1 year later, Tom achieved his dream. He got a job at an international company, and now he speaks English every day. He told me, "Emma, I used to think learning English was hard, but now I realize it wasn't hard. I just wasn't consistent. Once I made it a daily habit, it became easy." So, my dear listeners, if you want to master English like Tom, remember this. Practice a little every day. Make English a part of your life. Be patient. Success takes time, but it will come. And most importantly, never give up. Because if Tom could do it, so can you. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to subscribe to KGB English Hub for more tips, lessons, and real-life success stories. Let's make English learning fun and easy, together. Hello, dear listeners. Today I want to share with you a story that is very close to my heart. It's about my dear friend, John, a boy who taught me the true meaning of self-confidence and believing in oneself. John was just like many of us, afraid to speak up, afraid to fail. He was always the quiet one, sitting at the back of the classroom, avoiding attention. But it wasn't always like that. As a child, John was full of energy and curiosity. But as he grew older, something changed. He started believing that he wasn't good enough, especially in English. You see, John struggled with words. He had trouble pronouncing them correctly, and whenever he spoke in front of others, they would laugh. One day in class, he was asked to read a passage aloud. He fumbled, mispronounced words, and the entire class erupted in laughter. That moment shattered him. From that day on, he stopped speaking in English. He stopped raising his hand. He even avoided conversations. He convinced himself that he was simply not meant to learn English. But then something remarkable happened. One evening, while walking home, John met an old man sitting on a park bench reading an English newspaper. The man noticed John's sad expression and asked, "What's wrong, young man?" John hesitated, but finally shared his story, his fear of speaking, his struggles, and his belief that he would never be good at English. The old man smiled and said, "Do you know how birds learn to fly?" John looked at him confused. "They fall, they stumble, but they keep flapping their wings, and one day they soar. Learning a language is the same. Mistakes are proof that you are trying." John had never thought about it that way before. No one had ever told him that making mistakes was okay, that failure was just another step toward success. That night, John made a decision. He started small. Every morning he read just one sentence in English, then two, then a paragraph. Instead of fearing mistakes, he embraced them. He practiced speaking in front of the mirror. He watched English videos. And guess what? Slowly, he improved. He became more confident. The same classmates who once laughed at him started listening. One day, during a school competition, John stood on stage and delivered a speech in English. And this time, No one laughed. Instead, they clapped. John had done the impossible. He had found his confidence. And the best part? He realized that it was never about being perfect. It was about believing in himself. So, dear listeners, remember this. Believe in yourself. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that you keep going. Mistakes? They are just stepping stones to success. And if John could do it, so can you. And if you want to improve your English, don't wait. Start today. And remember, we at KGB English Hub are here to help you every step of the way. Subscribe now and take your first step toward confidence. Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to KGB English Hub, your home for mastering English one word at a time. Today I want to share with you a story of persistence, courage, and transformation. It's about my dear friend Anne, who once struggled with English, but went on to achieve fluency in the most inspiring way. If you've ever felt like learning English is too hard, or that fluency is out of reach, then listen closely, because Anne's journey will prove that all it takes is one word at a time. Anne was just like many of you. She was smart, talented, and had big dreams. But there was one thing that held her back: English. She had studied it in school, memorized vocabulary, and even tried practicing. But whenever she had to speak, she froze. She would open her mouth, but the words wouldn't come out. Or worse, they came out wrong, and she felt embarrassed. She once told me, "Emma, I feel like I'm trapped inside my own silence." Her fear of making mistakes made her avoid conversations. She stayed quiet in meetings, hesitated to order food in English, and even skipped opportunities that required speaking. Deep down, she wanted to be fluent, but she thought, maybe I'm just not good at languages. Does this sound familiar? Have you ever felt the same way? If you have, then let me tell you, the story doesn't end here. One day, something changed. Anne met an old professor of hers, a wise man who had lived in many countries. He asked her, "Anne, do you know how mountains are climbed?" She shook her head. He smiled and said, "One step at a time." Then he asked, "Do you know how languages are learned?" Anne thought for a moment and replied, "By studying grammar and vocabulary?" The professor chuckled and said, "No, my dear, one word at a time." That sentence changed everything. She realized she had been overwhelming herself. Instead of focusing on fluency, she decided to focus on just one word a day, learning it, using it, and making it her own. She started with simple words: hello, thank you, please. Then she moved to phrases: how are you? Nice to meet you. And little by little, she built her confidence. Anne made a promise to herself. Every single day, she would learn one new word and use it at least 3 times. At first, it felt small. But soon, one word became 10, 10 became 50, and 50 became 100. In a month, she knew 30 new words. In a year, she had 365 new words in her vocabulary. She also started listening to English every day. She played English podcasts while cooking. She watched English movies with subtitles. She listened to English songs and wrote down new words. Most importantly, she practiced speaking. Even if she made mistakes, she kept going. Because mistakes are not failures. They are proof that you are learning. One day, Anne found herself in a situation where she had to speak English. She was at a cafe when a tourist asked her for directions. For a moment, she panicked. Then she took a deep breath and thought, one word at a time. She started speaking, using simple words. Not perfect, not fast, but clear. And guess what? The tourist understood her. That moment changed her. She realized that fluency isn't about being perfect, it's about being understood. From then on, she stopped being afraid. She joined English clubs, made friends from different countries, and even traveled abroad, speaking confidently wherever she went. Anne, the girl who once feared speaking, had become fluent, confident, and unstoppable. So, my dear listeners, what can you learn from Anne's journey? 1. Fluency is not magic. It's consistency. 1 word a day is enough if you stay committed. 2. Mistakes are proof that you're learning. Never let fear stop you from speaking. 3. Listening is as important as speaking. Surround yourself with English every day. 4. Practice, practice, practice. Use new words in real life. Speak, write, and think in English. And most importantly, never give up. If Anne could do it, so can you. Start today, 1 word at a time. If this story inspired you, then make sure to subscribe to KGB English Hub for more motivational lessons, tips, and English learning hacks. Remember, fluency is not about speed, it's about progress. So start today, and who knows, maybe one day I'll be telling your success story. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another inspiring session at KGB English Hub, where we learn, grow, and conquer our fears together. Today, I want to share a story that changed my perspective on fear and confidence. It's about my dear friend Jerry, who once struggled with the fear of speaking but transformed himself completely. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll feel more motivated than ever to face your own fears. So, sit back and listen carefully. Jerry was always a bright and intelligent person. He had big dreams, a sharp mind, and a heart full of enthusiasm. But there was one thing that held him back: his fear of speaking English. He could read, he could write, but when it came to speaking, he would freeze. I still remember one day when he had to introduce himself in class. He stood up, palms sweating, heart racing, and voice trembling. The words wouldn't come out. He stammered, panicked, and sat down with his head lowered in embarrassment. That moment haunted him for days. "You don't understand, Emma," he told me one evening. "Every time I try to speak, my mind goes blank. People will judge me. They will laugh at my mistakes." I could see the pain in his eyes. He wanted to speak fluently, but fear had built a wall around him. I knew he needed to break free. But how? One day I introduced Jerry to a simple yet powerful concept: the mirror challenge. "Stand in front of the mirror and talk to yourself," I told him. "It sounds weird, but it works. The mirror doesn't judge you. Speak to yourself like you're talking to a friend." At first, Jerry laughed. "Talking to a mirror? That's ridiculous." But I insisted. "Try it for 7 days. Just 7 days, Jerry. What do you have to lose?" With hesitation, he agreed. He stood in front of the mirror that night, staring at his reflection. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. His own reflection intimidated him. But then he remembered. No one was watching, no one was judging, just him and his own voice. The first few days were tough. He fumbled, forgot words, and felt awkward. But slowly, things started changing. He began by introducing himself. "Hello, I am Jerry. I love learning new things. I want to improve my English." Every day he added more lines. He talked about his day, his dreams, his thoughts. And guess what? His confidence started to grow. He laughed at his own mistakes, corrected himself, and improved his pronunciation. The mirror became his best friend. One day he recorded himself speaking. When he listened to his voice, he was shocked. "I sound better than I thought," he said with excitement. That was a breakthrough moment. After 2 weeks of practicing in front of the mirror, Jerry took the next step, speaking in front of real people. He started small. First, he spoke to me in English. Then, he tried talking to shopkeepers, ordering food, and greeting strangers. There were mistakes, awkward pauses, and moments of doubt. But instead of running away, he kept going. He learned to laugh at his mistakes and correct them instead of feeling ashamed. One day, he did something incredible. He volunteered to give a small speech in class. The same Jerry who once couldn't introduce himself was now standing confidently in front of everyone, speaking with courage and clarity. The applause he received that day was not just from his classmates, but from himself. He had conquered his fear. Jerry's journey taught me a valuable lesson. Fear is just an illusion. The more you face it, the weaker it becomes. Mistakes are a part of learning, not something to be ashamed of. So, to everyone listening today, if you fear speaking English, take the mirror challenge. Speak to yourself, embrace your mistakes, and step out of your comfort zone. Trust me, you will see the change. And if you want more powerful tips and stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to KGB English Hub. Let's learn, grow, and speak confidently together. Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to another inspiring story on KGB English Hub, where we not only learn English, but also uncover the power of words. Today, I have a story that will make you believe that a single sentence can change a life. This is the story of my neighbor, Anne. Anne was not just a neighbor. She was a quiet woman who lived 2 houses away from me. She was always polite, but rarely spoke more than necessary. You see, Anne had a dream to become a writer. But she never believed she was good enough. Her English was not perfect, and she feared making mistakes. Every time she sat down to write, self-doubt consumed her. One evening, I saw Anne sitting alone on her porch, looking lost in thought. I walked over and asked, "Anne, what's on your mind?" She hesitated and then sighed. "Emma, I want to write. I have stories in my heart, but I'm afraid. My English isn't good enough. What if people laugh at me?" I looked at her and said one sentence that changed everything. "Your words have power, but only if you set them free." Anne stared at me, her eyes wide with realization. That sentence, those few words, sparked something inside her. The next day, she started writing. At first, it was just a few sentences, then a page, then a short story. Every time she doubted herself, she repeated that sentence, "Your words have power, but only if you set them free." She made mistakes, of course, but instead of stopping, she learned. She read books, practiced English, watched videos, and kept writing, and then one day she submitted a short story to a local magazine. She waited, nervous and uncertain. Weeks passed. Then one morning, an envelope arrived. It was a letter from the magazine. Anne held it in her hands, her fingers trembling. She opened it slowly and read the words, "Congratulations. We loved your story and would love to publish it." She couldn't believe it. She ran to my house, her face glowing with happiness. "Emma, they accepted it. They accepted my story." I smiled and said, "See, your words had power, and now the world gets to read them." Anne went on to write more stories. She published a book. She even started helping others who felt the same fear she once had. And all of this happened because of one sentence, a single thought that shifted her mindset. That, dear listeners, is the butterfly effect. One small thing, one sentence, can create waves of change. Anne's life changed, and now she's inspiring others. And you, my dear listeners, are no different. If you've ever doubted yourself while learning English, remember this: your words have power, but only if you set them free. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Every word you speak, every sentence you write is a step forward. Keep learning, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. If Anne could overcome her fears, so can you. And if you want to improve your English, learn new words, and get inspired every day, thank you for listening. And remember, your journey starts with one sentence. What will yours be? Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to another exciting episode of KGB English Hub, where we learn English through incredible stories. Today, I have an inspiring tale that will ignite your passion for learning. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the journey of James, a traveler who got lost but found something even greater along the way. James was an adventurer at heart. He had traveled through vast deserts, climbed towering mountains, and sailed across endless seas. But there was one thing that always made him nervous: speaking English. He had studied it for years, but never felt confident enough to use it in real conversations. What if I make mistakes? What if people laugh at me? These thoughts haunted him. One day, James landed in a bustling city in England. It was his dream destination, but he had a problem. He lost his backpack. Inside it were his passport, money, and most importantly, his travel journal. Panic set in. He searched every corner of the train station where he last had it. No luck. His heart pounded as he realized he would have to ask someone for help, in English. He hesitated. What if he couldn't find the right words? What if they didn't understand him? But then, a voice in his head reminded him, "You didn't travel across the world just to be silent." Summoning his courage, James approached a kind-looking woman at the information desk. "Excuse me, I lost my backpack. Can you help me?" The woman smiled. "Of course. Where did you last see it?" James tried to explain. He stumbled on words but kept going. He described the bag, its color, and its contents. The woman nodded, understanding him perfectly. After a few phone calls, she gave him good news. "Your bag was found in a cafe nearby." Relief flooded James. He thanked her, feeling a rush of confidence. He had spoken English, and people understood him. Then, that small victory changed everything. At the cafe, he met an old man named Mr. Carter, who had found his bag. "I noticed the journal inside," Mr. Carter said. "It's filled with stories of your travels." James smiled. "Yes, I love writing." Mr. Carter chuckled. "Then why don't you write about today? The day you conquered your fear?" James thought about it. This wasn't just a day he lost something. It was a day he found his voice. From that moment on, he stopped fearing mistakes. He spoke with locals, ordered food, and even made friends, all in English. Every conversation became a new adventure. And so, dear listeners, James learned that English is not about being perfect. It's about trying, learning, and growing. If he can do it, so can you. So, keep practicing, keep believing, and keep tuning in to KGB English Hub for more amazing stories. Don't forget to subscribe and embark on your own English adventure. We've traveled through 10 incredible stories filled with adventure, laughter, and maybe even a little bit of magic. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I loved sharing these tales with you. But don't worry, this isn't goodbye. There are so many more stories waiting to be told, and I can't wait to share them with you next time. And remember, the KGB English Hub podcast is here to help you every step of the way. We'll bring you more stories, more lessons, and more motivation, so you never feel alone on this journey. So hit that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend, and let's keep growing together. Keep listening, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next episode.